now you're gonna have to read Sanction. Have you heard of the book Sanction?
Yeah, my dad's told me a lot about Sanction. A lot.
It's messed up. I mean, tell you what, I probably got 3/4 of the way through it, and I was just like, I don't know if I could finish it. I mean, it's an encyclopedia. I mean, it's
Yeah.
that thick. It's crazy, and that's just volume one. I think he has 3 volumes of it. So.
Yeah, I know volume 1 because I know the cover of it.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it. My dad has it as his phone background. I'm like, what is the Sanction, like a cult type deal? Like, what's going on here?
It is 100%. Yeah. No, I was in the cult, so I know. Yeah, it's just a wild book, and it's a wild premise, and yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Sure. Welcome back to D All of the Above podcast about everything. Today, I am joined by not only a former Navy sub-officer, CEO of Peak Demand, an author of 2 best-selling leadership books, I Have the Watch, Becoming a Leader Worth Following, and All in the Same Boat, Lead Your Organization Like a Nuclear Sub. And he's also a host of a podcast, Deep Leadership. Mr. Rennie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
So, with that, Mr. Rennie, tell me a little bit about yourself and tell everybody else a little bit about yourself before we dive into the deep, hard questions.
Sure, absolutely. I was one of those strange kids when my mom and my 2 grandparents, 2 of my grandfathers were in World War II, and I was always fascinated with stories of World War II, and somewhere along the line as a kid, I started reading about submarines and what the submarines did during World War II, the different submarine crews, and I was always fascinated with the idea of underwater warfare. And so, as a kid, a teenager, I wanted to be on submarines, which is a really weird thing to want to do. It's like the kids who want to be a firefighter, right, and end up being a firefighter. Well, I was fascinated with submarines, and that's what I wanted to do. So I ended up, starting my career. I went to college, became a mechanical engineer, and then got a commission in the Navy, and got onto the boats. And I served 5 years on the USS Tennessee, and I made 7 patrols during the end of the Cold War. We had during the Cold War, it was like this cat and mouse game between the Soviets and the Americans, and submarines played a big part of it. So it's kind of a cool, part of my life. But that's how I started my career. But then I went into corporate America for 22 years. I led 8 different manufacturing businesses, and then I jumped ship. I got out of the corporate grind, started my own company 5.5 years ago. And and that's what I've been doing. I've been running my company. I've been writing books, writing about leadership. I speak on leadership, and I run a podcast, and so it's so I kind of a jack of all trades. But I started my career in the Navy, on submarines, kind of, leading people on a metal tube underneath the ocean for 3 months at a time, and learned a lot of valuable skills there that I took into the corporate world.
Just a big black metal vacuum tube. That's the best way I look at subs. Now, see, I was on a destroyer, so we looked at subs as targets, but I know subs. I know you guys love to call us surface guys targets because, well, in all honesty, y'all could definitely take us out before we would ever know you're there.
No, it's interesting because my grandfather was on a destroyer escort in World War II, my father's father, and he always told us stories about the North Atlantic and battles with the German U-boats and what have you. But I didn't realize like how involved he was. And he told, I was researching for this latest book I did. I included a little bit about my grandfather in the North Atlantic, but they went up against him, and he was on the USS Frost, and their sister ship, the USS Stanton. They went into a battle in the middle of a raging winter storm in the North Atlantic against 2 U-boats, and they ended up sinking both the U-boats. But they definitely were the hunted, and they came out on top, which is pretty scary. So, but I include part of that story of my grandfather in going up against 2 German U-boats in my latest book, because it's funny because he was a man that was like the calmest man I'd ever met in my life. He, like, nothing ever bothered him, and now I realized after learning about that story that once you're hunted by U-boats in the middle of a massive storm in the North Atlantic, everything else is pretty much easy in your life, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look back and you read the stories and you hear stories from World War II, Cold War. I mean, you even as recent as the Vietnam and Korean Wars, those guys are just straight up badasses, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, now we have people that have to, go seek therapy because you didn't get their latte right. And yet,
Yeah. No, these are tough
yeah, we had the
men.
caliber of men in World War II and World War One. It was
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah,
mind-boggling.
it is really mind-boggling. So yeah, it's I have just so much more respect for, him as I went into the Navy and learned kind of what it's like to be in the military and stuff. So I had a lot of respect. But it was almost, like when I went in the military, it was almost like I had to, like my grandfathers went, it was my time, I had to go. And I was the only out of all, both sides, the only grandchild that went in the military. But I just almost felt like they did it, I have to do it. So yeah. So military was just something I wanted to do. I did it. Spent a lot of time at sea. So I was kind of excited to get out and raise a family and that kind of thing. So yeah.
See, that was me. I've always wanted to be a mechanic since a kid. I tried something different. It didn't work out, and I ended up going right back to being a mechanic, and I absolutely love it. I build cars on my free time. I build airplanes for a living.
Nice.
I build guns that go pew pew pew, and I build little two-stroke scooters that can do almost 60, 65 miles an hour.
Well, that sounds like fun.
I like all the fast things, whether it's cars, planes, scooters, or guns. They all go
Yeah.
fast, and I like them.
Yeah,
So
I like it.
rolling in from the subs to the fact that you are an author of two absolutely very successful business leadership books. And you can see right behind you, everybody that's watching, you can see the posters.
Yeah.
Anybody that's listening, I'll have links to everything down in the description of the audio format. But writing, and I'm going to have to cut this one, but CEO of Peak Demand. Peak Demand is, what exactly is Peak Demand?
Yeah, we're a manufacturing company. We make products for electric utilities. So we make things like transformers, fuses, switches, the kind of stuff that you see up on the distribution lines, especially in rural. You see, you'll see fuse cutouts, you'll see transformers. We make a lot of the products that go up there. So we started this company 5.5 years ago. We're the smallest company in our industry, and we're the fastest. So we decided that the big companies in the industry were too slow. So, we're living in a world with Amazon where you can get something in 24 hours. I mean, it was taking 8, 10, 12 weeks to get products from the competitors, from the big companies in the industry, and our competitors now. So we started our own business. We go up fast, and we don't have a lot of bureaucracy. So, all of us came from big companies, and we sort of escaped, if you will, that the soulless, mindless, cubicle world of corporate America, and we're kind of doing it on our own now. It's a lot of fun. We're like a family, so much more fun than my corporate days.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll just be cutting out where I sounded like an idiot. So yeah, awesome. I'm also gonna add all that information for Peak Demand down in the description. That way, if you're looking for transformers or electrical equipment, he's your guy. So
Yes.
Rolling into being a sub officer, you're now CEO of a very successful company, and you're also an author of 2 great selling leadership books. One of my big questions is how can, not necessarily you, but how can people lead like they're all in the same boat, just like the title of your book? Because that is a very common saying in the business world is, oh, come on, we're all in the same boat. And you can say that, and I understand that you can say that, but 9 times out of 10, I have found that companies that say, we're all in the same boat, or, oh, we're a family, are actually some of the worst places to work, and their leadership is, well, more or less subpar. How would you tell, like a starting up company of how they could lead like you're all in the same boat?
Yeah, I mean, you were in the Navy as well, so you can understand this. So, on a submarine, it's kind of interesting. We would deploy. It'd be 155 guys. There were no women on submarines back then, but 155 guys. We'd go out for 3 months at a time, and we were in it together, right? They'd lock the hatch, right? We go underneath the ocean. They'd lock the hatch, and we would be there. So. And this is one thing, there was a shared responsibility, so we were all responsible for operating and doing our jobs, but there was also a shared vulnerability, right? So if even if your most junior sailor made a mistake, turned a valve wrong, made a mistake, didn't follow our procedure correctly, we're all going to die, right? I mean, so the enemy was the sea pressure surrounding the hull of the submarine. And it was the Soviets as well, but it was also the sea pressure, and we had to keep that sea pressure out of the people space, right? So we were in it together. And the other thing on a submarine is really unique, even outside of any other type of military unit, is that the officers and the enlisted and senior enlisted, there were no special privileges for officers or senior enlisted because there wasn't the space for it, right? So we did have a wardroom where the officers ate, but we ate and there was a chief's quarters and all that. But we all ate the same food. We wore the same uniform. We called it a poopy suit, but the blue coveralls. Once you're deployed, everybody's wearing blue coveralls, right? And we ate the same food. When there was a casualty drill, we'd wear what we call EABs. We'd plug into air manifolds around the submarine. We called sucking rubber. So we all suck rubber when things, when there was a casualty. When the galley went down, nobody ate. When the fresh water was out, nobody took showers. I mean, we were all in it together. There were no special privileges. And so you can imagine my surprise. I get out of the military, I come into the corporate world, and like the senior vice president's got this fancy office with a conference room with his own coffee maker, and he's got a secretary out there making sure that everything is perfect with him. I got on the shop floor. I started my career actually in Florida, in a manufacturing plant in Florida. People on the shop floor don't have air conditioning, and it's 100 degrees, it's 100% humidity, and they're doing their best to get through the day. And this guy up here is he's sipping cocktails, and he's got life is great,
smoking a big fat stogie.
Yeah,
just living the best life.
There was no we're in it together. It was clearly not in it together. And in these companies, when something goes wrong and they got to let people go, the guy in the corner office never goes anywhere. He doesn't get a reduction in salary, reduction in bonus, but the people on the shop floor, the lower levels get the shaft. So being all in the same boat means literally being all in the same boat. You're in it together. If there have to be a sacrifice taken, we all take that sacrifice. There are no special privileges in my companies, right? I am the CEO. Does that mean I get an assigned parking spot? No. Does it mean I got a special office? I have an office. It's not special. It's the same size as everybody else's office, right? So if you looked, I don't have them here, but my steel toe boots, you would look and you'd say, well, that's not the boots of a CEO. That's because I work on the shop floor. I put my boots on, I go out and I help the team when we need it. And I spend a lot of time with my team members. I spend more time with them than I do with sitting in my office doing emails and spreadsheets. And so I think being all in the same boat means working together to achieve a common goal. The other thing it means is when that submarine door, those submarine hatches were locked shut, guess what? You had to get along with the people that were inside that hull, right? And there might be people from different regions of the country, different political ideology, different races, genders. In my case, all male, but
translating to current day.
Right, current day would be men and women, but you had to get along with people that you had differences with, right? I mean, I remember we had one officer that was from the South, I was from the North, and he liked Andy Griffith. So every night he'd put a Andy Griffith show on, and I couldn't stand those things. I had no idea what this was. I mean, it's like the most corny thing I'd ever seen in my life, but I learned to appreciate. His name was Brad Tippins. I learned to appreciate Brad. I learned to he would tell me about these episodes and he would talk about the South, and I learned to appreciate it. So the thing is, we live in a society now where we all have to hate each other because the media and social media says we got to hate each other and we got to, and the thing is, like, when you're all in the same boat, you realize you got to get along with people that you maybe have differences with. And so you end up working out your problems. You don't hold grudges. You figure out how to make things happen. You look for those win-wins. And the other thing is you learn to take yourself a little less seriously. The one thing they say about a submariner, if something bothers you, never let a submariner know about it, because they will be relentless about attacking you on that particular issue. So you learn to have some thick skin, learn to laugh at yourself, not to take yourself too seriously. And by the way, there's a lot of people in corporate America could learn that lesson. Stop taking yourself so seriously, right? Some people think that they're all that, and they're not. So, I mean, that's what I talk about in the book. It's about being on the same team. It's about not having these special privileges for fancy titles and what have you. So it's just getting back to the reality. People are people, and I think that we we liked in corporate, people who have high ranks, or big titles think that they're special, and the book says you're not.
I will
So
say, all of my friends from work that are listening, because I know there's some of you that will be listening to this. See, I'm not the only one that says corporate America is essentially just one big clusterfuck. I'm not the only one. He agrees.
yeah,
See, I'm not crazy. I told you.
you're not crazy, and I
No,
spent
and I'll tell you
22
right now,
years in it. So
it
yeah,
hasn't changed. I
yeah,
can tell you right now that where I work, it's horrible because we people like on my level, we build the airplanes that make the company money since they're selling
yeah,
these $750 million airplanes. And when it's raise time, they're like, here's 25 shares of our stock that's declining in price, and you get to touch it in 3 years. Oh, but the CEO and the board of directors, we're gonna take like a 5-figure cash payout, and we're gonna
yeah,
go party on
yeah.
a yacht. And it's like, wait, hold on. What? So I don't get a cost of living raise. I don't get a
Yeah, yeah.
performance raise. And that was after
So,
they went from the individual performance based raise to the site wide, which got a lot of us very angry because a
yeah,
lot of
no,
us work really hard and there's a lot of us that don't.
no, you're 100% correct, and I think that's one thing I saw is, I was a vice president in corporate America, so you'd say, well, I was a senior manager, and I would, whatever. There are way more levels above me than there were below me, so I don't know if that means anything. But even as a vice president, I couldn't even control what raises I would give the people that working for me, and all that had to come from corporate, and it was always the same thing. Well, this year the budget's 1%. We're like, okay, 1%, that's not very much. I'm going to divvy it out the way I want to, right? Because you said average of 1%, I'll figure out how to make that happen, right? It's like, no, no, no. We're going to tell you how to divvy out the 1%. We're going to make, here we're going to do this annual review, right? And the people that score, a 5 out of 5 will get this, and the 0 out of 5 will get this. Oh, and by the way, you can't have any 5 out of 5. So everybody has to be at least, your average has to be 3 out of 5 when you do a evaluation. So all these rules came down from the top, where myself as a quote unquote senior manager, I couldn't even do what I wanted to do for my employees. And that's what got me more and more frustrated with corporate life, is that I was responsible for the performance of the business, but I wasn't given the authority to do what I needed to do to take care of my people. And that's ultimately what led to me leaving and starting my own business. I got so frustrated with being, being
Figurehead
a
for bad
lead.
news.
Yeah. I mean, I had to implement the bad ideas from upper management. That was my job.
And they got paid for the good ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just frustrating because employees would look at me like, are you kidding me? Like, you just had that reaction. Like, are you serious? And I'm like, I'm totally serious. I'm 100% serious.
Oh,
It was
it's
it's frustrated. So
I see
yeah,
it
it's very frustrating.
consistently, especially when they decided to go from a personal performance, which the first year I was in the first fiscal year that I worked there. I got a tiny little bonus. It was like $150, but it's because I didn't become a direct hire employee. I was a contractor, and then I became a direct hire employee in the first beginning part of December. So I only got a cash bonus from the beginning of December to the end of December for that year. So I understand that. The immediate next year that I was a full year of direct hire employee, they were like, "Oh, hey, we're gonna go to a site-wide performance," and I'm like, hold on, okay, I work on an average of anywhere from 10 to 13 hours a day, and this at this time. Now we don't really do overtime because of COVID and all that shit. But at the time, it was as much overtime as you want. We were kind of behind, so work until you were done working. So I was working anywhere from 10 to 13 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. I was busting my ass. And then they're like, "Oh, hey, you're going to get the same raise and the same bonus as Johnny Shitbag over there, who sits around for 40 hours, doesn't do anything in his regular 40 hours, and doesn't work any overtime.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself." What?
Yeah, that's a big problem with bonus systems, and I saw all sorts of different types in 22 years. But towards the end of my career, it was kind of funny because my bonus plan had nothing to do with anything I had control over. So they had decided, above a certain level at the company, that your bonus would be reflected on global results. So I had most of my performance. My bonus targets were on South America's profit performance of this company, and I had no influence on South America at all. It became, it wasn't a bonus, or it wasn't an incentive plan. It was just a bonus plan. Like, you didn't know, you had no control over it. So you just thought, if I get some money, I get some money. And so, these are the things that are really kind of like, we have taken humanity out of corporations. We treat everybody like a number. We try to implement all these kind of really vanilla policies where everybody's treated the same, and we're going to do 360 reviews, we're going to do all this stuff. And so what happens is that people get frustrated. They feel like this company doesn't care about me, I'm just a number. And so that's why a lot of people are disengaged in corporate America. I mean, there's 70%. I mean, the surveys say 70% of employees are disengaged at work, and only 30% are actually active, and they're involved, and they're excited about coming to work. So how does that happen? 70% of employees. Well, it happens because it's poor leadership. It happens because people are treated a number. It's treated like a number. It happens because they look at you, as somebody on the shop floor, as an expense, not an asset. So they think of you as a cost. They don't see all of the future value you're going to bring to the company. They just see, in the present, you're a cost. And so we're short-term focused, and that's why they do such kind of idiotic things, because they're chasing that stock price, right? And their bonus plan. So anyways,
you come talk to people at my job, because
yeah,
dude, the cost thing, you just nailed it. You nailed it on the head, because we have this thing called cost per job, and it's how much time it takes us to get each. We have, let's say, this job is to install this part onto the airplane. Mm-hmm. So they say, engineers in their infinite fucking wisdom, who, mind you, they sit at a computer and play solitaire all fucking day. They don't ever come to the floor. We have this little scrawny, fresh out of college engineer who has never turned a wrench in their life. They're like, oh, well, you have 30 minutes to do this job, and that's your cost for this job. And it's like, all right, look here, numbnuts. All right, first of all, you're looking at the airplane on a computer. Second of all, you're looking at the airplane on the computer with no other parts surrounding anything else. It's a bare barrel of how this part's supposed to get installed. Third of all, how about you come down to the airplane on the day that you made this due and realize how much other shit is in the way of me trying to install this part, and you tell me to do it and tell me how I'm going to do it in 30 minutes. Oh, not to mention I have to go get all my tools. I have to check the I have to check the engineering drawing that you wrote completely all fuckered up. So you come down and tell me how I'm going to do this in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, but I just started a new solitaire game.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, listen. If you can't tell, I don't like engineers.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because it's us and them. It's the us and them attitude that exists at most companies. And I saw that. Well, it's funny because when I started off, when I started in the civilian world after I got in the Navy, I was an engineer and I was doing design work.
I'm just kidding. Engineers are so cool.
What was cool about it is that our engineering department, R&D, where we do product support and R&D, was above the manufacturing floor. So we were in like a mezzanine, and it was kind of cool that I had a couple of mentors when I first came into the civilian world that they're like don't spend time in your office. You got to get down here and see. So I spent a lot of time on the shop floor, like with drawings, and I would be talking to like the brake operator. I'm like, I got to make this part. What kind of bend radius can I do? What works best for you, for the equipment we have? And just having those discussions, my drawings were better. They were more likely to be built correctly, so they would fit into the next assembly. So that kind of got into mindset. And the other thing is, it came from my submarine days as well too. Like we said, I don't know if they said it when you were in too, but we used to say, expect what you inspect. In other words, get your eyeballs on what's happening if you want to understand what's going on. And so I took that mentality from the Navy and I brought it right into my first job, and I spent a lot of time on the shop floor. I spent a lot of time talking to the operators. Does this work? How does this work? So, and so there's a lot of things that happen through that. One is you build relationships, right? You build mutual trust. So I trusted them because they were giving me advice. They trusted me because I was listening to that advice. So we built a relationship. They realized my job was difficult, and I realized their job was difficult. We built a bond between each other that wasn't just us and them. It's like, oh, those guys, those engineers, they, or oh man, just make it per the print, right? Stop. Why can't you make it per the print? So I think
work to hire Mr. Rennie to teach them how to lead and do engineer stuff. All right, noted.
So, but even, it's funny. I took over my first manufacturing plant. I was 32 years old, and I noticed that there was a physical separation between the salaried employees and the shop employees. Literally, there were two office areas in this manufacturing location, and so the office people are always in the office, and the manufacturing people are always in the manufacturing plant, and they only shared a break room and a couple of bathrooms. That was it, and there was a huge us and them mindset within that organization. And so one of the things I'm trying to figure out, like, how can I bridge this gap? How can I bring people together? I actually created a program. It wasn't a program in the beginning, but it became one eventually. But I started working every first Friday of every month. I'd work for 4 hours on the shop floor. And every month I would go to a different location. I'd work with operators, and I would just wear my boots. I'd put on my safety glasses, and I'm like, okay, it was like, that show Undercover Boss, only this was like 10 years before the show came out. But I would work with people on the shop floor, and I would learn, oh shoot, you don't have the right tools for this job. Your procedure's outdated. How do you make sure that this is done correctly? Well, we just kind of know it's not in the document. So I learned about all the tribal knowledge that existed on the shop floor. And so eventually I rolled this out to all the management teams. So then the first Friday of every month, the entire management team would go work 4 hours, different location every month. And then eventually all our salary employees started doing it too. So what that did was we built this bond between each other. So we actually learned a lot about what was going wrong in the organization. So, the guys on the floor could communicate better with the guys in the office because we'd actually work together, and, we turned wrenches together, and we could see what their frustration was. The biggest thing I saw was, remember the first time I did it, I walked out in the shop, and this guy was putting together these two parts, and he had a rubber mallet. And I was looking at the mallet, and he's like, well, what's wrong? I'm like, what's wrong with that mallet? It was a mallet that had been so worn with use that the mallet didn't even extend past the handles. And I said, is that normal? And he just laughed. He's like, well, not really. No. I was like, well, have you told anybody you need a new mallet? And he's like, I don't want to bother anybody in the office. We're just going to make do, and that always stuck with me. Like, how many people are making do because they don't want to interrupt people in management or people in the office because they think they're busy or whatever, or maybe they're playing solitaire. I don't know. But so that trying to bridge that gap and to get rid of that us and them it's hard to do. I mean, we were successful at that business because it was fairly small. Like, we probably had 140 employees, and we were able to kind of start having that dialogue communication. But the more people you have, the harder it is. That's what I learned as I went up in my career, that it was really, really hard when you had 600 people to do that, or 800 people.
I will say 140 people. I think we have that on my shift in my building, and that's it.
Yeah.
We are a worldwide company, but I'm gonna take this entire audio or video format and just send it to the CEO and be like, hey man, because so you mentioned working a tool, making a tool. Yeah. I'm a systems mechanic. I install flight critical components. One of the components I install is a FCAT. It's a forward cargo air conditioning system. On Dash 9s and Dash 8s, it's a hydraulic system. There's a control valve that I have to torque size 16 B nuts to, and size 16 B nuts have 750 inch-pounds of torque. Well, the engineers, in their infinite wisdom, were like, we need to brace up that control valve so you don't, bend the bracket that it's on, because it's on a thin L bracket of aluminum. And I have 3 750 inch-pound torques to do on this control valve. So they made me this wrench They rubber coated the end so it wouldn't scratch the enamel top coat on the control valve. You put it on the control valve, you torque it. Oh, I hit my mic. And it's cool. Except, here's the control valve. They have the wrench going here, but then I torque here. So I'm like, okay. And I brought the engineer back down. I was like, hey, man, I appreciate the wrench. I was like, I really do. Cool wrench. I like it. But it helps me with this one B-nut. I was like, if I have the wrench up there, I can't access that B-nut and it doesn't support the control valve on this one. You might just have to bring up that 7/32 thick L-bend aluminum and maybe, just maybe, do like a 1/4 inch aluminum. And he was like, I didn't even think about looking at the bracket. I'm like, that probably should have been the first thing you looked at, but you know, you do you. So, yeah. I mean, like you said, the company that you were working with, you know, you had a small amount of people. It was a little bit easier to work with. So I do understand that we are a worldwide company and there's, I don't know, probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of us. I get that. But I will say you're a great podcast guest because you rolled into rolled into the next question for me. It was great. Because one of the questions was, why is employee engagement still so low in most companies? And you nailed it. There is a disconnect. We see more of a disconnect between the shifts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We have a saying at my job that, you know, first shift builds careers, second shift builds airplanes.
Well, usually second shift, I mean, no, you know, I mean, I've been doing this I've been running manufacturing for a long time. Third shift, usually they have family. First shifts, they usually have a family. Second shift, they usually have a drug addiction or alcohol addiction. So
a lot of us have a nicotine or caffeine addiction, which luckily I've kicked both of mine. So
good deal.
Yeah,
no, it's usually single guys are younger. They like to party. It's a good schedule for that. So yeah.
Unfortunately, the majority of us are like that. You know, we don't have families. We don't have kids to, you know, spend time with. We just we like work. Right. But they used to do shift preference, and then they were like, we don't care about your preference anymore. We're going to put you where we want you. So there's a lot of people that have been moved around. My buddy who has either worked on second or third shift since we started 3 years ago, because went through training together. They just pulled him to first shift. They told him on a Thursday, they're like, hey, tomorrow's your first day on first shift. So yeah, go home, take a nap, and come back for first shift. He was like, what? Yeah. And so, I've talked to him. He's a little bit younger than me, so he kind of talks to me like I'm his big brother. I talk to him like he's my little brother. This is my 6th year in aviation. This is his 3rd year in aviation. He's never had a mechanical job like this. He's never worked aviation. So he comes to me with questions, and I try to mentor him as much as possible. And he came to me one day. He goes, dude, I don't know how much longer I can do first shift. I'm like, why? What's going on? He goes, I can sense my own productivity has gone down. He goes, I used to knock out 7-8 jobs in 5-6 hours. He goes, now I'm on first shift. And he goes, I thought we didn't have support on second shift. He goes, I can't even get support from my lead now being on first shift. Now, granted, his lead's a fucking idiot, and I hope he hears us because he's an idiot.
So, one of the things, I think about too, as far as like why so many people are disengaged and so, and frustrated at work is that, you think about it. A lot of people spend years to learn their trade to come in and work at these companies. So whether you're an engineer or you're like you were talking about earlier, like you had gone through all this certification to get to where you're at, right? And you don't even use some of that, some of those skills. But so we have all these employees that work hard to get to this job, right? And so when you come into a new job, you're got, bright-eyed, you're excited, you want to share what you know, you want to contribute to the company, you want to be a part of this, and you're proud too. When you first walk into like, I'm going to work at Boeing, I'm going to build the world's best aircraft, right?
I felt like a kid in a candy store. I was, fresh out of A&P school. Yeah. I had been working maintenance out in the field being a line rat, and I would walk in and, oh, shit. Yeah. Oh, my God, I'm the coolest man in the world. Now I dread it, so...
So that's the thing. So, but but that is a very common experience. So we take bright-eyed, excited uh, people that want to contribute, right? And then what we do is we put them in a job where we say, don't ask any questions. Don't tell us. We know what to do. We'll tell you how to do things. Oh, and by the way, you have no authority. If you have an expense report, even if it's 50 cents, you have to submit it and we'll check it over and we'll approve it. You have no authority. You have no voice. You're kind of put in as a, a gear in the machine. And, it doesn't take but a year or two of that. And you're like, you've got one or two attitudes. Like one is like, I'm getting out of here. I can't stand it. Or you're just like, I got to keep my head down. I just want to keep this job because it's got good benefits. And so but either way, you don't care anymore. You're disengaged. You're part of that 70% club that's become disengaged because nobody has listened to you. Nobody has asked you any questions. People don't even know your name. That's the thing that bothers me the most is, I can tell you time after time, I knew managers that could tell me every detail of the bonus plan, but they didn't know the names of the people that worked for them. Now, come on. I mean, so one of the things I talk about in both my books is I say leadership is a people business, right? Leadership is about people. It's about getting to know the people that work in your organization so you can help them. Here's what I found. If you can figure out what motivates somebody, like what their hopes and dreams are, what they're excited about, what really, spins them up and gets them excited, and you can put them in a role where they get to do that on a 5-day-a-week basis, and it actually helps the company. If you can do those two things, you can just step back and everything runs by itself because you got people aligned with their passions, right? And it doesn't always happen that way. And sometimes it's hard to find where people fit in the machine, right? But when you do that and they're excited about coming to work and they feel like their bosses care about them, their bosses have their back, they want to see them succeed, they're getting a chance to do something that they feel is valuable, then they're excited about coming to work. Then they're excited about new ideas and getting a chance to have a voice. But most people don't have a voice in these big companies. They're just thrown in a job and told what to do and given no authority whatsoever. And the authority always rests with the senior manager.
Are you sure that I didn't already interview you for episode 4, Talk with a Mentalist? Because you literally just you literally just took my entire experience over the last 3 years and just said it. Because, I said, when I first started, I was super excited.
Yeah.
I had a couple years of aviation on the maintenance side, so I had a little bit better of understanding of airplanes. And, a lot of people at work, they know the system that they install. They don't understand how it works. I'm able to then look at their system and be like, okay, this works through this way, this goes to this, blah, blah, blah. This, this part supports this part, which actually runs this part. I had that understanding. And I tried to be the proactive employee. I tried to be like, well, why don't we do things this easier way? Now, there are some things that are now done in my building because I've been in the same building, same cell, same team. I've been doing the same thing for 3 years. It's getting kind of monotonous at this point, but I still like it. I do bitch, but a bitch mechanic's a happy mechanic. So I do love it. But there are some things that have now been implemented that make life easier for the other guys that are doing the same jobs. But it finally got to a point where I would get pulled to the side and be like, oh, hey man, you can't be that upset about this. And I'm like, why not? This is something to be upset about. This is a safety issue that nobody seems to be listening. Well, you can't be upset. You're going to turn people off. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to build airplanes. I'm here to, make sure shit runs safely and smoothly. And then I got written up and got a corrective action for something that I had already been counseled on. And it was at that moment that I was just like, I used to get fired up. I used to get passionate about shit. When they cammed me for something that I had already been counseled on, I was like, okay. Yeah. I was like, now I'm going to just come in, do the bare minimum. I'm going to do just enough. I was like, y'all only pay me just enough to keep me from quitting. I'm going to do just enough work to keep y'all from firing me. I was like, I come in, keep my head down, go home. That's all I do now.
And you are 70% of the workforce in America today.
That's why I'm like, dude, you just looked into my entire past and just boop. Hey.
Yeah. Well, it's because I've been there, right? I've been in the trenches. I've been in, I've done it for 20. Yeah, I've been doing it for 20. I did it for 22 years in corporate America. I just saw it, and so you mentioned something that's really really important, and I was tweeting about this the other day, and people were like, "Oh, he's onto something," and it's very true. What I noticed as a leader is that the people that complain the most likely care the most about the company. They are trying to implement change and they're frustrated because people aren't listening to them. And so they get to be complainers, right? Now there's some people, granted, that they
They just
complain about
complain to hear
everything.
themselves talk.
Yeah, yeah. And you can sort of recognize it after a while as a leader. But when I hear someone complaining, I don't automatically say, "Oh, this guy's a pain," and this is a problem. Now I got to deal with this guy who's complain. No, I always say that one more time. What's wrong? He's like, I just noticed that every time whatever every time we operate this particular crane, I've got to take and bring this part of this one hook from this one crane and bring it over to here, and it's a waste of time. Why don't we have another hook on this crane? And I look at it, I'm like, I don't know, it's a good question. So instead of saying, "Oh, another this," it's Bob again. Bob's always complaining about everything, right? Instead of having that attitude, I'm like, I'll actually go physically look at it with, "Oh shoot, man, you're right. That's a great idea. Let me see what I can do to get you a hook on that one." Hey, thanks, John. I appreciate it. You guys. I mean, how hard is that? I mean, this is the way normal humans interact.
And what we build, I wish that they would listen to the people that complain, because I'm not the only one. I'm not the only loudmouth that has a lot to fucking say. My deal is the reason why I bitch so much and I complain is, I mean, we are building passenger airplanes. These airplanes can carry anywhere from 280 to 300, 330, 340 people. If you don't find a good way that's effective, but also safe and does the job correctly, like I've seen airplanes go down due to the smallest fucking thing, and it's the worst feeling in the world. And the airplane that I saw go down had 3 people in it. I can only imagine how I would feel watching an airplane go down with 300 people in it, and especially knowing, like, hey, that airplane went down and I build those airplanes. Like when we had the 737 crashes, everybody laughed. Like, there were people laughing. They're like, "Oh, we don't build crashing air." I'm like, "Look, motherfucker, that's a lot of people that died."
Yeah.
And it's because, and I'm not going to get into the details of why those airplanes crashed, because I don't know the exact details. They won't. That's not my place. But a lot of airplane crashes, or used to be, it's gotten a lot better now. But back in the day, a lot of airplanes crashes were caused by people that were being, lazy and not taking pride in their work. And there was an airplane that crashed in the Middle East. It was a Canadian airliner. They were doing flights to Mecca. Maintenance supervisor was like, "Oh no, we don't need those 5 psi in that adjacent tire." Tire went down they went down the runway. Tire blew, caught the magnesium wheel on fire, burned the entire airplane to a crisp, killed everybody on board because of 5 psi of pressure. It's little shit like that, and that's what bothers me. Is I see a way that we have in our production. What's the word I'm looking for? Process. In our manufacturing process, I see something that yes, it works, but there's probably a better way to do it that actually gets you a better quality result.
Yeah.
And I try to bring it up, and they're like, "Oh, well, we'll submit something to engineering and see what they say." Okay, well, why do we have to submit something to engineering? They're upstairs. Why can't they, just come downstairs?
Yeah.
Like, I know those stairs are tough, but there's also an elevator if you don't want to walk. Like, we got you covered. We have snack machines down here too. It's okay. But, and it's stuff like that has, like you said, then pushed me away from even wanting to say anything, because, well, I can say all I want, but nothing's going to change. And we're still going to be stuck with this stupid, lower quality manufacturing process. And that's why I'm ready to be my own boss and get out of corporate America. Which that actually ends up leading me to the last question that I have before we just get into, some deep conversation about what we've been talking about, and it's failure. You see a lot of failure in corporate. You see a lot of failure in small business. You see failure everywhere. And a lot of people look at failure as a bad thing. Why is failure an important training tool when it comes to leadership, and both in the small business and large corporate world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes right down to how we act as humans. We don't like to fail, right? It's embarrassing. It hurts our ego. It's not good for our pride. So, in essence, we try not to fail, right? In most things that we do, we try to succeed. But we really don't ever learn until we fail. Once you fail, that is an emotion. You have an emotional attachment to that failure, and you learn to not do that again. So, you went through Navy training, you know what that's like. Um, you're taught to do things a certain way, like say fighting a fire and donning your firefighting equipment, putting out the fire. And then when you do it wrong, and the drill instructor says, that you completely failed,
Run
right?
it back.
And you remember that, right? It's visceral, right? Like, I'm not going to do that again because I don't like the feeling of failure. So I tell a story in my second book about a young officer that when I was training. I was officer deck and he was training as junior officer deck, and he was a oh, how do I say this? He wasn't a very physical guy. He was small in stature. He wore glasses. He just wasn't a very physical kind of person. And we were simulating going up to periscope depth without during a casualty. So we had a fire and it knocks out the hydraulics. So we have no hydraulic assist on the scope. So that's a hard thing to do, spin that scope when you lose your hydraulic assist. So my job was to run this drill on him and to see how he did coming up to periscope depth. Well, um, I talk about the fact that you know when we ran the drill, it got really hot in control. He was starting to sweat. His glasses were fogging up. He couldn't spin the scope properly, and we had to do certain periscope searches as we went to periscope depth to make sure we didn't hit anything. And it was my assessment he wasn't doing it fast enough, and I felt like the ship was unsafe, right? So captain was in control as well, and he was observing this whole thing. Well, I went to go grab the scope to help him spin it so that he could do proper sweeps because I was worried about the safety of the boat. And my captain just chewed me out. He said, "Let him do it. Let him fail." And I was like, "What is going on? Like, I'm worried about like Captain, can't you see I'm worried about the boat? This guy can't spin the scope. He's not strong enough, right?" But he's like, "Let him fail." And was just an interesting thing because that he wanted that ensign to feel the pressure of what it's like to just completely fail, right? He wanted him to think about what he did wrong and try to figure out how to do it better, right? And so, and I failed as well too because the captain chewed me out because I wasn't letting him fail. I was helping him, and I shouldn't have been helping him. I should have let him have that failure. So I failed, he failed, and the captain pointed out both our failures, right? So, but the thing is, when I got to corporate America, I realized that we don't allow people to fail. We don't allow them to learn by doing things. So if you think about it, we give our most difficult tasks to our most senior people, right? So that they don't go wrong. And so the more junior people, the people that are coming into the organizations they're full of excitement, they're wide-eyed, they want to be a part of this organization. We say, no, no, no. We're not going to let you do that because you're too new. We're going to let this guy do it or this girl do it because she's been here longer than you. So we never give those opportunities to young people. We never give them a chance to show what they can do and also fail under supervision. So like you're watching that person do something that they've never done before and let them have a chance to make a mistake or two. And so they learn how to do things. So my concern is that we try to take away failure from people and that we think it's good for them, and it's not. You need to have failure to learn, right? You watch a kid learn how to walk, and ride a bike, right? How do they learn? It's through skin in their knees. It's through falling down. They figure out you've got to fail to learn. And I think we miss out on that in most companies because we don't want failure. We don't have time for it. So we give it to the senior guys.
And I think
And
avoiding
and
that
this
failure actually creates a fear in the younger
yeah
people and even in the older people because you don't allow that failure. So people then become afraid of failure,
yeah
which then can actually, eat up your quality even further than if you were to let them fail a couple times and learn from it. Now they've got a
Yeah.
fear from it. Now, oh, well, shit, I can't fuck this up. So then they end up fucking it up worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've seen that in aviation, both maintenance and manufacturing. You see people get afraid of it and they end up fucking shit up worse.
Yeah, no, it's bad. When there's fear, it's bad. And so part of it, some of that fear is just the culture of the company, right? If you fail, you're going to get fired, right? And so everyone's running around scared, so nobody wants to touch anything. I've seen that as well, and that's not a good thing as well, because I've seen some companies where if anything bad goes wrong, or there's bad news or bad information, or something goes wrong, everybody runs. They scatter like cockroaches because nobody wants to be associated with anything bad because they know it can be career ending. And that's when you have a company like that, it's really scary because I call them good news companies, where the only thing that gets to senior management is good news because everyone's afraid to share any bad news. So you suddenly you're not facing reality. You're facing some fantasy version of the company, or at least the senior managers are only hearing all the good news, right? They don't hear the bad stuff because everyone's afraid of sharing the bad stuff. So, fear is there's a lot of fear in corporate America, and fear really ends up costing companies a lot of money in poor quality, a lot of money in turnover with employees, a lot of money in it's just a lot of different things where real problems don't get solved because there's fear involved. So it's a big challenge, a big problem. Failure is a really important teaching tool, and we just can't take that away from people. So you have to have those opportunities to fail. And I always say under supervision. So, you're being monitored, you're being tested, you get a chance. You were in the Navy, so there's a qualification process, right? You learn you have a mentor, you have someone that's going to help you, show you, teach you. You have to get signed off that you're qualified. So you're learning by doing, and you get those chances. But in the work world, we sort of throw people to the wolves, and we're like, yeah, don't screw up.
Yeah,
Like, well, how do I do this? Don't screw up.
Whenever we get a barrel out of cell 10, which cell 10 puts the three major pieces, because the building I work in, we build the fuselage. It's from essentially first class all the way back to coach. They have the tail section and the flight deck; those get put on in final assembly. But we build every single mid body. When we get it in cell 20, which is where all the systems guys and wiring really, that's where the majority of shit happens, is cell 20. We have what we call as the cradle load, and it goes up in the crown up on the A deck, which is at the end of the process. That's where people sit, is on A deck. What we're installing, this is above the overhead compartments and all this. It's all the wiring, hydraulic tubes. It's everything is under there. But we have to drive this massive piece of machinery, and there's two of them because the cradles are in two sections. So we have to drive it up onto a lift it up next to the airplane, and then drive it almost into the airplane onto these platforms. Well, there was one day nobody that knew how to drive the LPL was there, so they're like, "Ha, random wiring guy, you're gonna drive the LPL." And he was like, "Okay, it's pretty simple. I've driven it before. It's little wheels, and it's kind of like a video game, more or less, to drive this thing." Slight problem. He ran into the edge of the barrel and created a 5-inch divot of separation in the carbon layers. And I will tell you, when shit hits the fan and people run, I'm telling you, even once you break something or you run into something like that, it's an automatic drug test. So he just sat there. He was like, "Yep." He started walking back down the bridge. He's like, "Yep." The security forces, they came in. They walked him over to medical. He knew what was going on. But everybody else, as soon as we heard that crunch, boom, there was nobody on the floor. There was nobody. We were all just like, "Oh shit." And I mean, and there was a time when I first started on that FCAT system. I was not trained properly by the person that used to do the job. They were just like, "Oh yeah, everything's loose installed. You just have to swedge everything together." Okay. So I went and swedged everything together. Nothing was clocked correctly. There was a tube that had to sit like this. That motherfucker was like that. And where most people at work, when they fuck up that grand. Because I mean, I think the entire system cost about $6-7 grand, and I had to cut all those tubes out and order new tubes and do it all over again. There's been other people that mess up in that, and from that point forward, they're just like, all right, well, fine, I'm not doing it. Get somebody that knows how to do it, because I'm not doing this again. I fucked that job up 3 times. I've had to cut out that entire system 3 times. Ever since then, I've never had to cut a tube out.
Yeah.
Because I've figured out where I was going wrong. I sat there one day, and once we finish the legit recording, I'll show you. We got given these tiny little notebooks, and I sat there on the engineering drawing on the computer, and I drew my own hydraulic schematic to know where these tubes need to go and how they're supposed to be. And now I'm the FCAT guy. I'm the only person that knows, because it's a series of 6 jobs. I'm the only person in that building that knows from the 1 to the 6. And it used to take, for those 6 jobs, it used to take 2 cells, 2 shifts, and 4 different people to do. If everything lines up correctly and all my supporting parts, like the ECS packs is in there, if everything is where it needs to be, I can do everything from the 1 to the 6 in about 6.5 hours. And it used to take people like 3-4 days to do this. And it's because I have found the most efficient way to do it, because I screwed it up 3 times. I had to pretty much learn the entire job from scratch on my own, just having to do it. And now people are like, well, how do you do all these jobs this fast? Because going back to the CPJ, a lot of the jobs that I do they're barred for minimum 2 hours. There's a 2-hour job that I do in 38 minutes, just because I've found the most efficient way to do it. And there's another gentleman on my team that he now does that job because, man, he's a good guy. He's a really nice guy. He's a really nice individual. Great individual. Worker? We'll just leave it at that. I'm sure you can pick up what I'm putting down. So we give him the smaller jobs. He's what we call our overbar. He doesn't get assigned jobs. He takes care of jobs that we may not be able to get to in the course of a day. And I tried to teach him. He was like, man, it's still taking me like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes to do this job. I'm like, all right, well, if you want, I can teach you how to do it the fast way. That still passes quality. It's still a good quality product, and it's safe. I was like, if you want that, I'll teach you. Oh, yeah. I taught him. He was like, Mom, I don't like how you do that. All right, well, then you do it your way and stick with an hour and 45 minutes. Right. I was like, I'm going to keep doing it in 38 minutes and moving on and doing more shit, so that way I'm not forced to come in on a weekend. Because I would like it to stay where my team can choose if they want to come in on a weekend instead of being forced to come in on a weekend to catch up on jobs. And we try to, and this is also going back to the us versus them. Our first shift systems team, we have this term called JBS, and it's jobs behind schedule. They're sitting at like 20, 25 jobs behind schedule, which isn't horrible. The second shift team, my team, we have 1. Just 1. And we've had, I think our max JBS over the past 2.5 weeks has been 5. And first shift, their highest that it's been up to is 63. And the upper management, who used to be on second shift, they moved him to first shift. He is now like, well, how come you guys are doing it and not first shift? And we're like, we don't know. You're on first shift. Why don't you ask them? Why are you asking us why first shift can't get their shit done? We're second shift. We get our shit done. Why are you asking what? And it's stuff like that we see. And it's honestly, it's turned me off of corporate America. I can't wait to get out of the
you're
corporate.
Not alone.
The corporate
You're
footprint,
not alone.
Start my own business. I want to be like you when I grow up.
Well, it's not all roses on the other side of the fence either.
Oh, yeah. And of course, the saying, grass is always greener. And sometimes that grass is just spray paint.
Yeah. Or just covered in manure. But but you're right. Exactly. So it's, I've enjoyed having my own business. There's a lot of freedom associated with it, but it's also a lot more, it's a lot more stress involved because, when you work for a big company, you never think about cash. You never think about money. You pretty much, there's money, you see so much wasted money. I mean, most big companies waste more money a day that I make in a year. Right. So for me, it's kind of managing every penny and watching everything really closely. And yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so there's a different pressures associated, but I think the biggest thing that I like and what my employees like is freedom. We get to do things the way we think it should be done. And we get to treat each other like people, not like oh, well, you're a worker, you're a manager, you're an engineer. We treat each other like, well, you know, you're a person. You're Parker, right? My employee, one of my employees, and I get to know them as people. They get to know me as people, and I don't spend time in my office. We don't have meetings. We work together as a team to get things done, and that's a great feeling. And I think we spend so much time at work that why not make it enjoyable, right? Yes, you can make money. Yes, you can be successful, but why not have fun while you're doing it? Why not enjoy yourself while you're doing it? Why be miserable? A lot of guys they make good money. They work at some corporate gig. They're miserable all day long, and then they live their whole life on their weekends. Friday night we start drinking and we go party and we do all this sort of thing. So their whole life is, they're and they can't wait for their vacation. They can't wait for retirement. Why don't you build a life where you don't have to take a vacation from, that you actually enjoy doing what you do? And that's what I do now. So I enjoy doing what I do, which is good, because I spent a lot of time being miserable. So I'm glad that I'm in a role now where I enjoy what I do. It's not really work. It's what I do to make money, but it's not really work anymore. So
see, that's why I got to give you mad respect, for the way that you run your business, and you don't have numbers of employees, you have employees. And one of the big things that what really started my push against corporate America is back in 2019, actually back in the summer of 2019? Yeah, in the summer of 2019, I used to move these two pieces of equipment that bore out the lug for the landing gear. And the entire equipment, including what we moved it on, what we lifted it up to the airplane for, it all together weighed about 1,600 pounds each. And there was two of them. And I was moving them across one side of the production floor to the other by myself. And it had wheels. 1,600 pounds, it doesn't matter. There was one night I went to go pull it away. I heard a nice little pop in my shoulder. It hurt. Next day, hurt a little bit more. Didn't get any better. Went to medical. Turns out, at the ripe old age of, I was what, 22? 23? How old am I? I'm 26 now, so 24. Haha.
Yeah.
I was 24. And I had to have shoulder surgery because I had 6 micro tears in my labrum ligament.
Oh, gee.
And while I'm waiting for surgery, I'm in a sling because they were like, keep your arm in a sling until surgery because we don't want you completely ruining everything. And we all got pulled together for a all hands safety brief on preventing injury. And the safety guy looked me dead in the face and went, what do you do every day to prevent injury? And I'm in a sling and I just look at him and I'm like, well, I'm scheduled for shoulder surgery for moving a piece of equipment by myself since I have no support on second shift. Yeah, I'm scheduled for surgery in 2 weeks, so I guess I can't really answer your question. Still, he pulled me off to the side at the end. He was like, that was kind of embarrassing. I'm like, are you really? Really? I'm like, that was embarrassing? I was like, not the fact that I'm in a sling having to get shoulder surgery because we have no support from the safety crew because you leave at 2:30 when we start working? Like, I was like, who's it embarrassing for, me or you? I ended up getting counseled by my manager for that one.
Yeah, I bet on that one. But it's just funny, I was thinking, I thought you were gonna tell the story differently. But the one thing I also see in big companies is that when someone makes a mistake, they don't address that one person that made the mistake, right? They'll bring everybody together and chew everybody out, and everybody knows. Well, Bob, you made the mistake.
We know who fucked up. You don't need to bring us all into this.
Everybody keeps looking over at Bob, and they're like, "You guys can't be doing it this way," and we're like, No, we don't do it that way, except Bob does.
No, the fuck we don't. He do.
So yeah, where everybody gets punished for one person's mistake, and that's very frustrating for employees. So I always try to say, don't, when there's a problem, don't, use a sniper. It's a sniper rifle, not a shotgun, right? You want to address it. You want to address the specific issue versus trying to make I can't stand it when I work for big companies and a policy would come out like, okay, from now on, we're going to do X or Y. And everyone knows this because one guy screwed up. And so now the rules change for everybody. And I always couldn't stand that. So I always try to make sure that, I control my fire and I direct it where it's required, not, you don't make everybody suffer because of one person's mistake. And that seems to be common. It's just lazy management is what it is when people do that.
Mm-hmm. So with that, Mr. Rennie, I definitely appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's absolute blast. I know I've learned a lot, and honestly, I might be having to put 2 more books on my bookshelf. And those books, of course, anybody that's jumping in the middle of this, I don't know why you jump in at the ass end. It's weird, but hey, you do you. I'm not here to judge you. Mr. Rennie here is an author of 2 leadership books. Again, the first one is I Have the Watch, Becoming a Leader Worth Following. As you can, anybody that's watching, right there behind him in 3 different spots. And he also wrote All in the Same Boat, Lead Your Organization Like a Nuclear Submarine, which that one I'm actually really very interested in, because I will eventually be running my own businesses. Also, I mean, running peak demand. And you said that was industrial, electrical industrial equipment. So, I mean, hey, if there's any listeners that need industrial electrical equipment, hit up Mr. Rennie. So with that, Mr. Rennie, where can people find you? Where can they find all of this information? Find your wisdom, find you, essentially.
Yeah, it's simple, jonsrennie.com. And there's links to all of my, podcasts, blog posts. I write articles. You can buy my book on that website, links to social media. I'm pretty active on Twitter. So, hit me up on Twitter if you had any questions about the show. My link to Twitter is on the website. But so everything is jonsrennie.com. You get everything there, and one-stop shop.
And all those links will be posted down in the description, both in the video format and on the audio format, anywhere you find podcasts, and also YouTube. Mr. Rennie, thank you so much again. Definitely appreciate you coming out. Probably gonna have you come back and tell some more stories from the sub, because I know I got to be bringing Chief Chuck back to do some more stories on the plane. It's, honestly, I might have to get both of you on, have a sub officer and a sub hunter.
Yeah, no,
we'll get both aspects of this thing.
I have had Chuck on my show, and it would be kind of fun to have 3 of us talk about
Look, man,
Navy life.
We have aviation, we have sub, and we have surface. We have the trifecta of the United States Navy.
Right, absolutely.
All right, with that, everybody, thanks for coming out. We'll catch you next time. Don't be a shitty human. Catch you later. What's up, everyone? Thank you for watching the podcast. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it even better, follow the PayPal link or take a peek at the Amazon wishlist link below. Make sure to subscribe and like, and tell everyone you know. See you next time.